The party of science, I don't know if you know that, you got to follow the science. They are gone the science direction. They say they are now going to drop $20 million on what Fox News calls a bizarre American men's strategy in effort to dig out of a 2024 political hole. What does this mean exactly? Every dumb thing you think it means. Trump made big inroads with the male vote during 2024 election cycle. A Fox News voters survey published in November found that men aged 18 to 44 supported Trump at 53%, compared to former Vice President Kamala Harris at 45%. While the Associated Press found that more than half of male voters under the age of 30 voted for Trump instead of Harris, including roughly 6 in 10 white male voters supporting Trump, about 1/3 of black male voters supporting Trump, and 50% of young Latino male voters. Trump's support among young black and Latino male voters jumped by about 20% compared to his 2020 support, said the AP. So that's why you need this program, right? You need this program because you're not connecting with male voters if you're on the left. I don't know what could possibly be the reason for that at all. They just seem all so masculine. Think of the masculinity of a Pete Buttigieg for a second, okay? I mean, how do you get more masculine than that? He's so masculine, he likes dudes. He should actually be in charge of this. If it's the search for dudes, he probably has a good idea where to find them. So that's just something, maybe a resource for them to utilize. And maybe he'd be a little cheaper than $20 million. I'm just throwing that out there. 6 months later, Democrats are still searching for the path forward. The party's standing is startlingly low after a defeat that felt like a cultural rejection. What comes next? Well, that's where we find out about this $20 million study. Prospectus for one new $20 million effort obtained by the New York Times aims to reverse the erosion of Democratic support among young men, especially online. It is codenamed SAM. Yes, it's short for Speaking with American Men, a strategic plan. God, this is pathetic. And it promises investment to study the syntax, language, and content. It's like they're aliens. Like just dudes are just like aliens to these people. Men who act like men. It's like it's a species from the planet Zarkon. No, they're just guys. Like, you could talk to them really anywhere. You don't really need $20 million to study them. I mean, if you are a mildly attractive woman, we'll talk to you like all day long and about everything. So, it's gonna be hard to get us to shut up. That's usually the way this works. I know, and this is the problem with you on the left, you're thinking to yourself, well, what about men like Pete Buttigieg who like men? And that is true. There are some out there, although you don't necessarily have to give every disclaimer every time you make a sentence. That's kind of the point. And one of the reasons why the Democrats lose every single time, or at least seems like it recently, it's codenamed SAM, short for Speaking for American Men, a strategic plan, and promises investment to study the syntax, language, and content that gains attention and virality in these spaces. It recommends buying advertisements in video games. Oh my God. Above all, we must shift from a moralizing tone. Well, I will say, pretty good advice. Yes, every time you hear a joke that you don't like, trying to get the person canceled and saying how evil they are, probably not the right path to go down. Should be pretty obvious, I would think, to people. But, you can't reverse engineer what it's like to be one of the two genders. And again, probably if you felt offended by that statement, it's part of the problem. Two genders, that's what there is. Now, Ro Khanna is out there talking about this as well. Did I mention he's going to run for president? I should point out, there's only a 100% chance. Here's Ro Khanna talking about this study on young Turks.
Yeah. So you're saying that just taking 20 million and throwing it into a study group on how to attract men isn't going to win Democrats elections?
That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. I mean, it reminds me of David Brooks and when I think it was Josh Hawley who went and gave a speech in Missouri on manliness and how the Republicans need to be more manly. And I was having coffee. I don't think Brooks will mind me saying this. He said, you know what? Donald Trump would never have to give a speech on manliness. He just exudes it or something. And, the Democrats don't need a study. We just need to understand that a lot of people lost jobs supporting their families. They lost self-respect. We gave all the glory to tech folks in my district, and some of them are doing great things, and finance folks, but not the people who built the steel and built the industry. They literally were flyover country. We never recognized their contributions. We didn't recognize the challenges that men were facing in terms of their physical safety, in terms of getting a good job, and the pressures of supporting a family, in terms of the concerns with law enforcement, and men are incarcerated at a much larger rate. And we kind of made it seem like being a man was easy when men were struggling. And then on top of that, we had this sense that if they said the wrong thing, they would be they'd be canceled. And there was this curtailment on speech. So I don't need a study to say any of that. I just talk to enough people. I mean, maybe just talking to people and understanding people is what's needed.
It should be that obvious. I don't think Democrats can possibly get there, though. I don't think that is obvious at all to most Democrats. Maybe it is to Ro Khanna, but it's not to most of them. I mean, if you remember, they've tried this thing before without the study group. And you might say $20 million for a study group. That's a terrible investment. I'd argue maybe it's worth spending the $20 million if you happen to be a Democrat, because when they tried to do it without the $20 million study group, they came up with this.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
I'm a man, man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Meat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They want to use IVF to start a family? I'm not afraid of families.
They want to be childless cat ladies?
Have all the cats you want.
Woman wants to be president?
Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Because I'm man enough to support women.
Man enough to know what kind of donuts I like.
Man enough to admit I'm lost, even when I refuse to ask for directions.
Man enough to not ban young women from reading Little Women.
Or one of those pants books that the sisters like.
I'm man enough to raw dog a flight. It sucked. Not worth it.
I'm man enough to be emotional in front of my wife.
In front of my kids.
In front of my horse.
I'm man enough to tell you that I cry at Love Actually.
Good Will Hunting.
West Side Story.
That and Predator.
And I'm sick of so-called men domineering, belittling, and controlling women just so they can feel more powerful.
That's not how my mama raised me.
I love women.
I love women who support their families.
Women who decide not to have families.
Women who take charge.
And I'm man enough to help them win.
That is the most revolting. I can't believe that's actually real. I can't believe that wasn't a parody bit that we did to make fun of the left. Gee, I wonder why they lost. Can you possibly imagine? That wasn't actually an official ad too? I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. It definitely has that whole feel of, trying to analyze these people, like men, as if they're like this alien species, and like this is how they talk, and this is their syntax. This is their syntax. It's like a robot. It definitely has a "How do you feel, fellow kids" vibe to it, does it not? How do you do, fellow kids? It's so embarrassing, but it's so satisfying, honestly. I mean, because what's fascinating about this, there was a clip the other day that I saw of Josh Hawley talking to a teacher in some congressional hearing, and she's trying to corner him. And she's so sure of herself, and she's making such an idiot of herself. And she's trying to corner him to say that men cannot give birth to children. Now, you might know that as biological fact, but in the left's world, it really is a different world. I've been talking a lot about this in a series of books, but the Jake Tapper one is the most famous one, Original Sin. And one of the things that they deal with in the book is how the Bidens believed Joe Biden could possibly serve as president until, let me remind you, January 2029. That's what they were proposing he did. And everyone obviously knew from the outside what was going on. Yet there was this pressure. There was this constant campaign inside the White House and from the outside as well, kind of spreading out that way, that you couldn't speak up about it. right? Like you couldn't say the obvious thing because the obvious thing will get you in trouble, get you excommunicated. There's a couple stories in the books about people who actually did step up and say, hey, behind the scenes, like you can't run, you can't do this anymore. And those people, including one of his main pollsters from the 2020 campaign, was basically excommunicated from the circle, was not allowed to be back in the campaign because he questioned this. You're not allowed to question this. And I think that's where the left is right now in so many of these obvious issues. They are so terrified to speak out or so darn sure of themselves, even though they're completely wrong, that they can't bridge the gap. Like, how do you bridge the gap to men? I don't know. Change all your positions? That's what the study group should say. Stop being so awful all the time about everything. I mean, that's another possible line in the report. There's no way to bridge the gap with a report like this. If you can't intuitively know that the idea of saying, yeah, we definitely think, males should come in and wrestle against females and beat them up, if you can't kind of suss that one out and just say, absolutely, we need to be on the correct side of that issue and not let that occur. If you think that teenage girls should be getting changed in front of teenage boys because of some gender equity thing, and you can't suss out that maybe your position's freaking insane, well, of course you're not going to connect with guys. I mean, look, this is the obvious effort of someone like Ro Khanna here, right? He's looking at this and saying, and this is the calculus of a lot of these guys. You're going to see definitely, I think, Khanna, but maybe others say the problem with us right now is not that we want to spend forever. The problem is not that we, love abortion or whatever, some of their positions are. Those positions you can test relatively positively, even though I think they're horrific. It's not that we want to support the minimum wage to $18 an hour or whatever it is. We just can't sound insane. If we just come out there with our normal package of policies that are, expanding the government and taking, more control of your life, people will pretty much still be fine with that as long as we come off as normal and don't try to, encourage ridiculous things and defend ridiculous things. I mean, go back to the campaign for a second. Really big part of the campaign was Kamala Harris saying previously, but it being uncovered, that she was going to support giving sex changes to illegal immigrants in prison. And it's like, on its surface, don't you know that that's just not going to fly with people? What could possibly make you say that at any point? It's an obviously insane position. And I think someone like, I don't think Ro Khanna believes that, but like someone like that who can come out, Josh Shapiro might be that person, or, Fetterman is sort of in that space right now where you can come out and say, hey, here's something that's actually sane. Here, let me give you some sane things, and I'll package it with my socialism light. You can probably swallow that, right? And a lot of that comes down to just basically who the Republicans have. If they have a candidate who sucks, you can probably beat the Republican with that. If you have a candidate who's pretty good, it's going to probably be tough, but it's possible. And, it's really interesting time. I mean, does the Democratic Party try to go say, okay, we tried having Joe Biden, who tried to come off with the trappings of a moderate, but ran as a liberal and was pushed to the left in his senility as a liberal? Or do we go towards someone in the middle who can give a more sane policy proposal for the country? However, maybe doesn't do all the things that we want. Or, which is probably the most likely path, do we reject what we had and go even further left? Do we go with an AOC for president? It's going to be a really fun time once we get past this midterm. It's going to be really, really interesting.